The metallic groan of the Valiant's hull echoed through the bridge as Captain Jake Morrison watched the massive colony ship New Hope grow larger on the view screen. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the command railing, fighting the dread creeping up his spine. 6 months. 6 months of absolute radio silence from 80,000 souls who should have been celebrating their arrival at humanity's first interstellar colony. "Talk to me, Davis." Jake's voice sliced through the suffocating tension that had gripped his crew for the past 3 days. "What are we looking at?" Lieutenant Amy Davis hunched over her scanner console, her normally steady hands trembling slightly. As she adjusted the sensors, the readings made no sense. She'd run the diagnostics 4 times, hoping for equipment failure. No such luck. "Captain, I'm detecting maybe 15 life signs scattered throughout the ship," she reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "But sir, the thermal readings are completely impossible. The entire vessel is reading temperatures near absolute zero." Jake felt his blood turn to ice water. The New Hope wasn't just any ship, it was humanity's crown jewel. Technological marvel that had taken 30 years to build and another 20 to launch. Aboard were Earth's brightest minds, most skilled workers, and their families. Scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers, the very best of humanity, carrying the dreams of an entire species to the stars. Now it drifted through space like a massive tomb, darker than the void surrounding it. 15 survivors out of 80,000, Jake muttered, running calculations in his head that made his stomach churn. That's a 99.9% casualty rate. What the hell happened out there? The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Every crew member aboard the Valiant had friends or family on the New Hope. Jake's own brother Michael had been aboard with his wife and 2 kids, heading to start a new life among the stars. The silence from the colony ship wasn't just professionally concerning, it was personally devastating. Could be a plague, suggested Dr. Sarah Coleman, the ship's chief medical officer. Some kind of biological weapon or unknown pathogen they encountered. "Are pirates," growled Master Sergeant Rick Torres, the security chief. Though what kind of pirates could take down a ship that size? Jake studied the tactical display, his military training kicking in despite the emotional turmoil. The asterisk knew. Hope asterisk showed no signs of external damage. No hull breaches, no weapon impacts, no evidence of boarding or combat. Whatever had killed nearly everyone aboard had come from within. "Here's what we know," Jake announced, his voice taking on the authoritative tone that had carried him through 2 decades of military service. The New Hope was supposed to establish humanity's first permanent colony outside our solar system. They had everything they needed: advanced technology, skilled personnel, and enough supplies to sustain a population of 100,000 for 50 years. He paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. Now we're looking at what might be the greatest disaster in human history, and we're the only ones close enough to do something about it. The view screen showed the New Hope in all its tragic glory. The ship was enormous, nearly 5 miles long and 2 miles wide, designed to be a self-sustaining city in space. Its hull, once gleaming white with humanity's hopes and dreams, now appeared dull and lifeless against the starfield. Captain Davis called out, her voice tight with urgency. "I'm detecting some kind of energy signature from the ship. It's unlike anything in our databases." Jake moved to her station, studying the readouts over her shoulder. The energy patterns were definitely artificial, but they didn't match any known human technology. More disturbing was how they seemed to pulse in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. "Could be alien technology," Jake said quietly, voicing what everyone was thinking but afraid to say. "We always knew this day might come. It's first contact with an intelligence. That doesn't play by our rules." Implications hit the crew like a physical blow. If hostile aliens had taken the New Hope, Earth needed to know immediately. But if they were dealing with some kind of unknown phenomenon or accident, the survivors might still be saved. "Prep the boarding team," Jake ordered, his voice cutting through the fear and uncertainty. "Full hazmat protocols. Environmental suits. Sealed systems, and assume everything aboard is contaminated until proven otherwise." Master Sergeant Torres nodded grimly. "How many in the boarding party, Captain? Keep it small. 6 people maximum. We go in fast, locate the survivors, and Get out. Whatever killed 79,985 people might still be active. As the crew prepared for boarding operations, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something that would change humanity forever. The New Hope had been launched with such optimism, such faith in the future. Now it floated before them like a monument to human ambition gone horribly wrong. The docking procedure took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. The mechanical sounds of the airlock systems seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. When the final seal engaged, Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. "We're lock secure," reported the boarding team leader. "Atmospheric. Readings show the ship still has life support, but the temperature's dropping fast." Jake suited up alongside his team, checking and rechecking every seal and system. Whatever they found aboard the New Hope would determine not just the fate of the survivors, but possibly the future of human expansion into the galaxy. The airlock hissed open, revealing corridors that should have been bustling with activity. Instead, they found only darkness and a cold so intense it seemed to reach through their environmental suits and touch their souls. What they discovered next would test everything they thought they knew about survival, sacrifice, and what it truly means to be human. Asterisk want to discover how small actions can compound into life-changing results. Check out my next video about the incredible power of compounding. It might just transform how you think about success. Asterisk the boarding team's flashlights cut through the darkness like surgical scalpels, revealing a scene that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The first corridor they entered was packed with bodies, not the decomposed remains you'd expect after 6 months, but perfectly preserved figures locked in crystalline ice that sparkled like deadly diamonds under their lights. "Jesus Christ," Dr. Marcus Webb whispered, his voice barely audible through the cum system. As the team's biologist, he'd seen plenty of death in his career, but nothing like this. What kind of weapon could do this? Jake Morrison forced himself to move forward, his military training battling against every instinct screaming at him. To run? The scene before them defied everything he knew about warfare, disease, and death itself. These people hadn't just died. They'd been transformed into frozen sculptures of their final moments. A mother clutched her infant to her chest, both encased in ice so clear you could see the terror frozen in their eyes. A father had thrown himself over his 2 children, his arms spread wide in a protective gesture that had become his tomb. Their faces showed pure primal fear, the kind of expression that only comes when you realize death is inevitable and there's nothing you can do to stop it. "Captain," Jake knelt beside a frozen couple near the corridor entrance. The man's hand was stretched towards something down the hallway, his mouth open in what must have been a scream. The woman beside him had fallen to her knees, her arms reaching upward as if pleading with some unseen force. But here's what made Jake's blood run cold. The ice wasn't coating them from the outside, like you'd expect from explosive decompression or external freezing. It had formed from within their bodies, as if their very blood had crystallized instantly. You could see the ice formations spreading through their veins like deadly spider webs beneath their skin. "This is impossible," Dr. Webb muttered, scanning the bodies with his medical tricorder. "Human blood doesn't freeze like this at these temperatures. Even if the ship lost life support, it would take hours for bodies to freeze solid. These people froze in seconds." Master Sergeant Torres, ever the practical soldier, was already thinking tactically. Whatever did this moved fast. Look at their positions. They were running towards something, not away from it. That observation sent a chill down Jake's spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. These people hadn't been fleeing in terror. They'd been trying to help someone or something. In their final moments, even facing certain death, they'd been trying to save others, Captain. Lieutenant Davis's voice crackled through their cum systems with barely contained excitement. "I'm detecting a strong life sign. Central hub, level 12. It's definitely human, and it's moving." Jake felt his heart rate spike. A survivor. After seeing this frozen hell, finding someone alive seemed almost miraculous. But a nagging voice in his head wondered if this person was still alive. What made them different from the 80,000 who'd died? "All right, people," Jake announced. his voice taking on the authoritative tone that had carried his team through countless dangerous missions. "We move as a unit. Stay alert, stay together, and remember, whatever killed these people might still be active." They began their journey through the ship's frozen arteries, and each step revealed new horrors. The cafeteria they passed had been filled with families enjoying their final meal together. Ice-covered plates of food sat on tables where children had been laughing just hours before their deaths. A birthday cake sat partially eaten, its candles still standing like tiny monuments to celebration turned to tragedy. "Shh, you know it's really getting to me," Torres said, his voice tight with emotion. "These people trusted their government, trusted the scientists, trusted the mission. They sold everything they owned, left everyone they knew, all for the promise of a better life among the stars." The playground was perhaps the worst. Swings hung motionless, covered in frost that glittered like fairy dust in their flashlights. Children's toys lay scattered across the ground, frozen in place where little hands had dropped them. A teddy bear sat propped against a slide, its glassy eyes staring accusingly at the boarding team. "This is why we do what we do," Jake said, quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command and the pain of loss. Every person aboard this ship represented humanity's best hope for the future. They were pioneers, explorers, dreamers. They deserved better than this. Dr. Webb's scanner was going crazy as they moved deeper into the ship. "Captain, the temperature is still dropping. We're now at minus 40 degrees Celsius and falling. Our suits can handle it, but whatever's causing this is getting stronger." Their breath formed clouds inside their helmets despite the heated suits, and frost began forming on their visors. The ship's life support systems were still functioning, but they were fighting a losing battle against whatever force was creating this unnatural cold. "Here's what doesn't make sense," Jake said, his analytical mind working through the puzzle. "The ship's hull is intact. No signs of external damage, no hull breaches, no evidence of combat. This wasn't an attack from outside, whatever killed. These people came from within. They passed through a section that had once been a school. Tiny desks sat in perfect rows, each one occupied by a frozen child with their hand raised as if answering a question. The teacher stood at the front of the class, her mouth open in mid-sentence, eyes wide with the realization that something was terribly wrong. "The preservation is incredible," Dr. Webb observed, his scientific curiosity overcoming his horror. "It's like time stopped for these people. No cellular damage, no decomposition. They're frozen at the molecular level." But Jake was focused on something else, the positioning of the bodies. "Look at the pattern," he said, pointing down the corridor. "They're all facing the same direction."
Oh.
They were moving toward something, not away from it. That's when Davis's voice cut through their observations with urgent news. "Captain, I'm tracking that life sign. It's definitely human, but there's something else. The energy signature I detected earlier is strongest around the survivor's location." Jake felt his pulse quicken. Were they walking into a trap? Were they about to rescue someone who held the key to understanding this tragedy? "Double time it, people," Jake ordered. "We find this survivor, get answers, and get out. Whatever's creating this deep freeze is still active, and I don't want to end up as ice sculptures ourselves." As they moved through the ship's frozen corridors, past the remnants of humanity's greatest adventure, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The survivor they were tracking might be the key to saving Earth from whatever had destroyed the New Hope. But first, they had to reach them alive. Asterisk ready to discover how small daily actions can compound into extraordinary results. I'll see my next video reveals the life-changing power of compounding. Don't miss it. The ship's main plaza had once been the heart of the New Hope asterisk, a massive open space where families gathered. Children played, and colonists shared their dreams of building a new world. Now it looked like the epicenter of humanity's worst nightmare. But in the middle of this frozen wasteland sat something impossible. A living man. Tom Bradley huddled beside. A small fire that flickered defiantly against the surrounding ice. The flames danced and crackled, casting eerie shadows on the frozen walls around him. It was the only source of warmth in the entire vessel and around it. The ice had retreated to form a perfect circle of survivable space, like the fire was holding back death itself. "Stay back," Tom shouted, his voice raw with exhaustion and terror as he saw the boarding team approach. He scrambled backward, nearly falling over his own feet in his desperation to put distance between himself and the rescue team. "Don't come near me. I can't control it." Jake Morrison had seen plenty of traumatized survivors in his military career, but something about this man's panic was different. It wasn't the fear of someone who'd been through hell, it was the terror of someone who'd become hell itself. "Easy there," Jake said. His weapon drawn, but not aimed directly at Tom. His training told him to approach carefully, assess the threat, and establish communication. "I'm Captain Morrison. We're here to help." "What's your name?" "Tom. Tom Bradley." The man's voice shook like leaves in a hurricane, and Jake could see the exhaustion written in every line of his face. Dark circles ringed his eyes, and his clothes hung loose on his frame as if he'd lost significant weight. "I was a researcher, stenobiology. We found something in the asteroid belt during our journey, something that shouldn't exist." Dr. Webb immediately stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. "What kind of organism are we talking about? Bacterial? Viral? Some kind of unknown pathogen?" But Jake was studying the scene around Tom with growing horror. The frozen bodies that surrounded the man's small haven told a story more tragic than any war he'd ever witnessed. They formed a perfect circle, all reaching toward Tom when death had claimed them. Unlike the other bodies they'd seen throughout the ship, these people hadn't died running away from danger. They died trying to help. "What happened to them?" Jake demanded, his voice carrying the authority of command but also the pain of someone who'd lost too many good people. Tom's face crumpled and tears began streaming down his cheek stairs that froze before they could fall to the ground. "They tried to help when I got sick. The cold started spreading through me about 3 weeks into our journey. First, everyone thought it was just some kind of space flu. You know how it is on long voyages, people get sick, they recover, life goes on." He paused, staring at the frozen figures around him with a mixture of love and devastating guilt. "My wife Lisa was first. She was always the caretaker, always the one who'd bring me soup when I was under the weather. She came to check on me, gave me a hug to make me feel better, and she just froze solid, right in my arms." Jake felt his stomach drop. The implications were staggering. If Tom was somehow causing the freezing effect, then every person who'd tried to help him had signed their own death warrant through an act of love and compassion. "Then my son Danny tried to wake her up," Tom continued, his voice breaking. "He was only 8 years old. He kept shaking her, asking why Mommy wouldn't wake up. When he touched her, the cold spread to him too. Then the doctors came running. Then the security team, then more family members and friends. Master Sergeant Torres was scanning the perimeter, his military instincts on high alert. How many people died trying to help you?" Tom's laugh was bitter and hollow. "All of them. Every single person who came near me. 80,000 souls. And they all died because they couldn't stop being human long enough to save themselves." The boarding team exchanged glances, and Jake could see the same thought running through everyone's mind. Tom wasn't just a survivor. Was the source of the disaster? He was patient zero for whatever had killed everyone aboard the New Hope. "Here's what I don't understand," Jake said, his analytical mind working through the puzzle. "If touching you kills people instantly, how are you still alive? What makes you different?" Tom looked up at him with eyes that held more pain than any human should have to bear. "Because I'm not fully human anymore. Whatever infected me, it's keeping me alive to serve its purpose. I'm like a walking biological weapon, and I can't turn it off." Dr. Webb was frantically scanning Tom from a safe distance, his medical tricorder going crazy with readings. "Captain, his cellular structure is completely altered. There's some kind of crystalline lattice integrated into his DNA. It's like his body has become a living freezer. The organism we found," Tom continued, "it wasn't like anything in our databases. It survived in the vacuum of space, fed on heat and thermal energy. When it infected me, it tried to transform me into something like itself. Cold, crystalline, deadly." Jake studied the frozen bodies around Tom's sanctuary. Each face told a story of love, sacrifice, and tragic heroism. A woman who'd reached out to comfort a friend. A man who'd tried to pull someone to safety, children who'd run to help there parents. Every single death had been caused by humanity's greatest strength, the inability to abandon someone in need. You know what's really tragic about this? Jake said, his voice heavy with emotion. These people died because they were human. Because they couldn't ignore suffering, couldn't walk away from someone who needed help. In any other situation, that would have made them heroes. Tom nodded, fresh tears freezing on his cheeks. That's exactly what the organism counts on. It spreads through compassion, through love, through every instinct that makes us human. It's the perfect weapon against our species. Lieutenant Davis was monitoring her scanners, and her readings were becoming increasingly alarming. Hey, Captain, the temperature is still dropping. Whatever's affecting Tom is getting stronger. Jake made a command decision that would haunt him for the rest of his career. We can't take you back with us, Tom. You know that, right? Tom's smile was sad but accepting. I know, but Captain, you have to understand this isn't over. The organism. Samples we collected are still in the research labs. If anyone else gets infected, if this spreads to other ships, or back to Earth, ... The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. Tom wasn't just the sole survivor of humanity's greatest disaster. He was a preview of what could happen to the entire human race if they didn't contain this threat. But as Jake looked at the man, sitting alone in his circle of fire, surrounded by the frozen bodies of everyone who'd ever loved him, he realized something profound about the human condition. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage come not from heroic charges into battle, but from the quiet decision to sacrifice everything to protect others. Asterisk want to understand how small decisions can compound into life-changing consequences. Check out my next video about the incredible power of compounding it. Might just change how you see every choice you make. Asterisk Dr. Marcus Webb's hands trembled as he adjusted his medical scanner, keeping a careful 20-foot distance from Tom Bradley. The readings on his tricorder defied every law of biology he'd learned in 30 years of medical practice. What he was seeing shouldn't be possible, yet the evidence was literally frozen all around them. Captain Webb's voice was tight with scientific disbelief and growing horror. His cellular structure is completely altered. Some kind of crystalline parasite has integrated directly into his DNA. It's not just living inside him, it's become part of him at the molecular level. Jake Morrison felt his blood pressure spike as he processed the implications. They weren't dealing with a simple infection or contamination. This was something far more sinister, complete biological transformation. That had turned a human being into a living weapon. The organism is converting water molecules into ice at the atomic level, Webb continued, his voice rising with urgency. Tom's body has become a walking freezer. Every breath he takes, every beat of his heart, is spreading this crystalline structure into the environment around him. Tom Bradley nodded miserably, his face a mask of guilt and self-loathing. The organism we found during our asteroid mining operation, it wasn't like anything in Earth's databases. Hell, it wasn't like anything that should exist in our universe. Gestured toward the frozen bodies surrounding his small sanctuary, his voice breaking with emotion. This thing survived in the vacuum of space for God knows how long. It fed on heat, on thermal energy, on life itself. When it infected me, it tried to transform me into something like it. Cold, crystalline, dead. Jake felt a rage building inside. Him that was both professional and deeply personal. His brother Michael had been aboard this ship with his family. 2 kids who'd never see their 10th birthday because of this thing sitting in front of them. How many people did you kill? Jake demanded, his voice carrying the full weight of military authority and personal fury. All of them. Tom screamed, his voice echoing through the frozen plaza with raw anguish. 80,000 people. My wife Lisa, my son Danny, my research team, my friends, they all died because I couldn't control this thing inside me. The boarding party instinctively raised their weapons, and Jake could see the same realization dawning on each team member's face. Tom wasn't just a survivor of this tragedy, he was the walking embodiment of it. It's a biological weapon of mass destruction that could end human civilization with a single touch. You want to know the really sick part? Tom continued, his voice now carrying a bitter edge. The organism doesn't just kill randomly, it's intelligent. It spreads through human compassion, through our inability to abandon someone in need. It's the perfect weapon against our species because it uses our humanity against us, Master Sergeant. Torres was thinking tactically, his military training kicking into high gear. One touch from you could start a chain reaction that would freeze entire worlds. How do we know you're not planning to spread this thing deliberately? Tom's laugh was hollow and heartbreaking, because I've been sitting here for 6 months, slowly going insane. Fighting every instinct to end my own life just to make sure this thing doesn't spread any further. Do you think I want to live like this? Dr. Webb was still analyzing his scanner readings, and what he found made his blood run cold. Captain, the organism isn't just parasitic, it's adaptive. It's learning from Tom's human physiology, evolving, to become more effective at spreading through human contact. Jake felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking together in his mind, and the picture they formed was absolutely terrifying. This isn't just about one ship or one colony. This is about the survival of the human race. Exactly, Tom said quietly. The organism keeps me alive not out of mercy, but out of necessity. I'm patient zero for a plague that could end all warm-blooded life in the galaxy. It needs me alive to study human biology to perfect its infection method. The temperature around them continued to drop, and Jake could see frost forming on the inner surfaces of their environmental suits. Whatever was happening to Tom was getting stronger, more aggressive. Here's what terrifies me most, Tom continued, his voice now carrying the weight of 6 months of isolation and guilt. The organism isn't just trying to kill humanity, it's trying to replace us. It's creating a new form of life that can survive in the coldest reaches of space. It feeds on the thermal energy of living planets. Lieutenant Davis was monitoring her instruments with growing alarm. Captain, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures throughout the ship. The organism isn't just in Tom, it's spread throughout the entire vessel. Jake felt his tactical mind racing through scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. If this thing gets back to Earth, if it spreads to other colonies, ... game over, Tom finished. Humanity becomes extinct, and the organism moves on to the next inhabited world. It's done this before, Captain. It's the energy signatures we detected. In the asteroid belt, they weren't natural formations. They were the frozen remains of other civilizations. As the boarding team exchanged glances, and Jake could see the same question in everyone's eyes. How do you fight an enemy that uses your own humanity against you? How do you protect the human race from a weapon that spreads through compassion and love? But here's the thing about us humans, Jake said, his voice taking on the inspirational tone that had carried his troops through countless impossible missions. We don't just survive, we adapt. We find ways to turn our greatest weaknesses into our greatest strengths. Tom looked up at him with a mixture of hope and despair. What are you saying, Captain? Saying that if this organism thinks it can use human nature against us, it's about to learn something about the other side of human nature. The part that fights back. The part that never gives up. The part that finds a way to win, even when winning seems impossible. But even as Jake spoke those words, he knew they were facing an enemy unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. An enemy that had potentially destroyed entire civilizations, that turned one of Earth's best scientists into a walking weapon of mass destruction. The question now was whether human ingenuity and determination would be enough to stop a force that had been perfecting its deadly craft for millions of years. Ready to discover how small actions can compound into extraordinary results that change everything? My next video reveals the incredible power of compounding, the same principle that could save humanity itself. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the frozen plaza of the New Hope facing the hardest decision of his 20-year military career. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did in this moment. Surrounded by the crystalline remains of 80,000 souls and staring at the man who'd killed them all through an act of love, "We can't let you leave this ship, Tom," Jake said, his voice carrying the absolute authority of command mixed with genuine human compassion. You know that. Tom Bradley nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face and freezing into tiny crystals before they could fall. "I know, Captain. I've known for 6 months. But you have to destroy the research samples in Lab 7 if anyone else gets infected. If this organism spreads to other ships or colonies," Jake felt the crushing responsibility of the moment. One wrong decision here could mean the end of human civilization. Not just the 80,000 people aboard the New Hope, but but the billions back on Earth, the colonists on Mars, the space stations scattered throughout the solar system. All of humanity's hopes and dreams could be snuffed out by a single mistake. "We'll incinerate everything," Jake promised, his voice steady, despite the turmoil in his heart. "Every sample, every piece of research, every trace of that organism will be destroyed. But Tom, I need to understand something. How did you survive? When everyone else died, what made you different?" Tom's answer would haunt Jake for the rest of his life. "Because I stopped fighting it," he said simply. "The organism feeds on warmth, on life, on the very essence of what makes us human. But humans fight back. We resist. We struggle against death with every fiber of our being. And that resistance, that refusal to give up, that's what kills us." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. The very qualities that had made humanity strong enough to reach the stars' determination, resilience, the refusal to surrender, were exactly what this alien organism used to destroy them. It was the perfect weapon against their species. "You're not just a victim," Jake said, understanding dawning in his voice. "You're a warning. A living reminder of what happens when humanity encounters something that can turn our greatest strengths into our greatest weaknesses." Tom smiled sadly, and for a moment, Jake could see the brilliant scientist he'd once been. The man who dedicated his life to expanding human knowledge and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. "Tell them about us, Captain. Tell them that humans never stop trying to save each other, even when it's hopeless. That's what made us strong enough to reach the stars, but it's also what nearly destroyed us here." Master Sergeant Torres was monitoring his instruments with growing concern. "Captain, the temperature is still dropping. We need to evacuate now, or we'll end up like the others." But Jake couldn't bring himself to move. He was looking at a man who'd made the ultimate sacrifice, not dying for his people, but choosing to live in isolation forever to protect them. Tom had become humanity's guardian angel and its greatest threat, all wrapped into one tragic figure. "There's something else," Tom said, his voice urgent now. "The organism isn't just intelligent, it's patient. It's been waiting for millions of years, moving from star system to star system, wiping out entire civilizations. We're not the first, and we won't be the last unless someone finds a way to stop it." Dr. Webb was still analyzing his scanner readings, desperate to find some piece of information that might help. "Tom, is there any way to reverse the infection? Any weakness we can exploit?" Tom shook his head sadly. "The only weakness is human. Compassion itself. Organism spreads through contact, through our inability to abandon someone in need. The irony is perfect. The very thing that makes us human is what destroys us." Jake felt anger building inside him, but it wasn't directed at Tom. It was fury at the cosmic injustice of it all. Humanity had spent centuries overcoming their differences, learning to work together, developing the technology and cooperation needed to spread life throughout the galaxy. Now, they'd encountered something that could end it all simply by exploiting their willingness to help each other. "You know what I think?" Jake said, his voice taking on the inspirational tone that had carried his troops through impossible missions. "I think this organism made one critical miscalculation. It assumes that knowing about human nature will let it control human nature. But there's one thing it doesn't understand about us." Tom looked up at him with genuine curiosity. "What's that?" "We learn. We adapt. We find ways to turn our weaknesses into strengths. This organism may have destroyed other civilizations, but it's never faced humanity before. We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own stupidity. We're the ones who looked at the vast emptiness of space and said, 'Let's go exploring.'" Lieutenant Davis was becoming increasingly urgent in her warnings. "Captain, we have to go now. The Valiant sensors are detecting temperature fluctuations that suggest the organism is becoming more active." Jake looked at Tom one last time, seeing not just the man who'd killed 80,000 people, but the man who'd chosen to carry that burden alone to protect billions more. "We'll remember them, Tom. All of them. We'll make sure their sacrifice wasn't in vain." Tom nodded, settling back beside his small fire. "Tell them that human love is both our greatest strength and our greatest vulnerability. But don't tell them to stop loving. Tell them to love smarter. As the boarding team prepared to leave, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. They were carrying more than just information back to Earth. They were carrying the future of human civilization itself. The Valiant pulled away from the ghost ship, leaving Tom to his eternal vigil. In the vast emptiness of space, the New Hope continued its journey, no longer a vessel of hope, but a monument to the price of human curiosity and the courage to face the unknown. Jake watched through the view screen as the ship grew smaller, knowing that somewhere in those frozen corridors, a man sat alone by a fire, keeping watch over the darkness to make sure it never spread to another world. Sometimes the greatest act of humanity is knowing when to stop being human, but sometimes the most human thing of all is choosing to bear that burden alone so others don't have to. The story of the New Hope would become a legend, a reminder that even in humanity's darkest hour, there are those willing to sacrifice everything to protect the future. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of strength that can overcome any enemy, even one that feeds on human nature itself. Asterisk. Want to discover how small daily actions can compound into extraordinary results that change everything? My next video reveals the incredible power of compounding, the same principle that could help humanity overcome any challenge.